Now, if you wish to write your methodology section, you have to go through moves and steps. What you have to write and how you have to write. Let's look at moves and steps. In this slide, I'm going to show you a picture from one study. Although this is old, this is not necessarily useless. This can help you write your methodology section. Actually, it divides methodology into 3 subparts or subsections, and under each subsection we have some other subsections, and you can see that it divides this section, I mean methodology, into description of data collection procedures, description of experimental procedure, and description of data analysis procedures. As you see here, first of all, it talks about collecting data, and at the end of the methodology section, you have to tell the readers how you analyze data, how actually data analysis had happened. In the first subsection, you have to tell the readers, indicating the data source, from which sample or from which population you have collected the data, indicating the data size, the sample size, the population size, and something like this, and indicating the data collection criteria, who actually were included in your sample and who were excluded from your sample. The inclusion and exclusion criteria should be discussed here. So you have to tell the readers, the participants or the subjects, age range, gender, demographic info in general, and other specific criteria based on which you have included them or have excluded them, their number, their education, whatever it is. Okay. In the second part, you have to tell the readers the experimental procedure, identifying the main research paralysis, the instruments you have used. For example, a questionnaire, a kind of thermometer, okay, a kind of instrument being used in your research. Portraying the process of experiment, you have to tell the readers what happened, how you collected data from these people, from these actually this sample, okay? Not necessarily people all the time. You might collect data from some animals, okay? Some fish. Or you might collect data from some molecules, okay? Then not necessarily people all the time. In social sciences, you might collect data from people all the time or most of the time, but in science, you might collect data from some molecules, okay? Then you have to tell the process of collecting data. You have to narrate what happened behind the locked doors, what you did first, second, third, fourth, and finally, what was the process of experiment, and identifying the success criteria. And in this third section or subsection, you have to tell the terminology related to data analysis, indicating how data is classified and indicating the instruments and procedures of data analysis. In this subsection, you have to tell the readers how you analyze data, which actually instruments have been used. For example, we tell the readers that we used, for example, SPSS software, okay, the 24th edition, okay. Then the readers will know which software I have used in my research to analyze data, okay, not to collect, to analyze data. And I tell them that I used ANOVA or MANOVA or t-test or whatever it is, okay. And specifically in most research, we tell them to answer the first question, I used SPSS 2014, for example, t-test, independent t-test, or ANOVA, And to answer the second question, I used SPSS 2014, the other options, okay, of that software, okay, the other procedures. Then we have to tell the readers all what happened behind the locked doors, all what I just know and others don't know, okay. And this is actually a way of writing your methodology section. This depends on you, which one to include and which one to exclude. This depends on the nature of your research. This depends on the nature of journal in which you're going to publish your paper, or the type of research you have done or you had done. The university, the policy of university, the preference of your professor if you are writing your thesis or dissertation. It is the steps, moves and steps taken in a medical research article, okay? But we have another moves and steps. This is another moves and steps and the percentages, which will show you which one can be excluded. For example, one other scientist actually studied some research articles, some theses, dissertations from different disciplines, from different journals, from different universities, and saw this. The author have to include the list here, but 90%, for example, included research design, okay? Or here, as you see, presenting the data collection, 100%. Indicating the instruments and procedures of data analysis, 100%. This means that some are somehow compulsory. You have to tell the readers how you collect the data and how you analyze data. Then you cannot flee away. Then you cannot actually shy away from telling this. Okay, this must be told to the readers. But the others might depend on the nature of the research. For example, defining the terminology related to data analysis. This depends on the nature of the nature of research. In some cases, in 10% of the research, researchers talked about it, but in the 90%, the other 90%, the researchers didn't talk about data analysis or terminology related to data analysis. Then you can decide better based on these percentages. For example, in 80% of research, you have to tell the research setting. This means that the time and location of your research. You have to tell the readers that I have done, I did this research, or this research was done in summer 2021, in October, for example, 2021. Okay, you have to tell, and then you should tell them the location. For example, at Oxford University. Okay, or you can tell some other places the place of study. Indicating the aim of the research for 40%, because we talk about it, the aim of research in the introduction section as well. 60% of researchers did not include it here. Indicating the research method, 10%. Indicating the research questions, 10%, because we talk about it in the introduction section. We tell the readers that the research questions and research hypotheses are this and that in the introduction section. Then some people thought that it is not necessary here. Presenting the conceptual framework of the study, because most of the time we talk about it in the literature review section or in the conceptual framework section, subsection, someplace like that. Then most of the researchers didn't write it here. Then you have to talk about the sample. This is related to the research. Here we have another subsection, the sample. With regard to sample, you have to tell inclusion criteria, 90%. indicating the sampling procedure. For example, you tell that this is a convenient sampling, this is a stratified random sampling. Then you must tell it, somehow you must tell it. Indicating the exclusion criteria. What will happen if, for example, one of them don't actually complete the questionnaire, for example. You have to put it aside, put that person or that guy aside. Okay, put him aside. Then this is the exclusion criteria. You should tell what reason might actually force you kick them out, kick the sample out. Okay. Presenting the population of the study, you have to talk about the population and sample, both of them. Here we have to talk about data collection, as you see here. Data collection is a must. Presenting the data collection instrument, you have to talk about it. You have to tell that how and what I use to collect data. Indicating the data collection procedure, you have to tell how I collected data. Validity and reliability, you have to have another subsection. Presenting evidence for validity and of the data collection instrument. For example, you have used a questionnaire, whether your questionnaire is valid and reliable or not. If yes, you have to tell the readers. If not, you don't use that questionnaire at all, because if it is not valid, if it is not reliable, we don't use such a questionnaire. Then we have another subsection, data analysis, indicating the instruments and procedures of data analysis. We talked about it. For example, we use software, for example, to analyze data. Defining the terminology related to data analysis, some 10% only here. And some researchers, specifically based on AP style, we are forced to talk about ethical issues. For example, we have to tell the readers that we took their identity confidential. The participants participated in my study actually voluntarily, okay, by their own wish. We didn't force them to participate in our research. Then we have to talk about ethical issues as well. I think that this table is much more complete than the previous slide because it shows more detail, the percentages, I mean where and when I am forced to include, and which one I'm forced to include, and which one is somehow optional here, can be understood by the percentages. And it actually classified the sections and subsections of methodology neatly, and it included a lot more info, actually a lot more than the previous slide. And I recommend you specifically, if you're a researcher from social sciences or from medicine, for example, or social sciences specifically, okay, not science necessarily, stick to this table. Although you can use this table, this actually template, this outline, whatever you call it, when you are a, for example, science student, physics student, okay, you can use this table in all disciplines, but specifically you can use this table if you are a actually medical student or you are a social science student. You know that research in different disciplines are more or less the same. Papers in most actually disciplines are, I mean, more or less the same. Or in most journals, papers are more or less the same. Then, if you wish to distinguish the differences between your, for example, target journal from the others, your preferred journal from the others, your style of your university's style from the other university, it is better to read some papers published by that journal or thesis submitted to that university, defended at that university. I mean, supervised at your university. That will make the differences actually much more understandable, much more clear. But the structure, I mean the general structure of a methodology section or other sections as well, are more or less the same, and you have to stick to some guidelines. This is gonna help you the most. Good luck.